couldn't see the blood, but I could smell it. Iron, copper, death. The odor permeated the air around me, so thick it almost had texture. And beneath it, beneath the horror of what had just happened, I could still smell him. Aged leather, cold steel, night forest, Lazarus. The silence was the worst. Seconds before, the world had been a symphony of violence, screams of dying men, the viscous sound of flesh being torn, the guttural howl of a predator who knew no mercy. I had covered my ears with my hands, but it hadn't helped. Every sound had etched itself into my memory like invisible scars. And now, silence. My bare feet found the path before my mind could stop me. I couldn't see, never could, but my other senses had become maps of their own. The residual heat from the fallen bodies, the scent of fresh blood indicating where not to step. And there, in the center of it all, a source of heat so intense it felt like a sun amidst the darkness. Him. My fingers found him first. His chest, bare where his shirt had been torn, rising and falling in breaths that were more growls than air. His skin was covered in something hot and viscous that I knew was blood, blood that wasn't his. He recoiled from my touch as if I had burned him. No, his voice was unrecognizable, more animal than man. Don't touch me. I'm filthy. But I didn't step back. Instead, I took one more step forward. My fingers traced up his chest, feeling the old scars beneath the layer of fresh blood. I moved up his neck, across his clenched jaw, until I found his face, and then I hugged him. I felt the shock run through his body like an earthquake. I felt his arms hanging limply by his sides, refusing to touch me. I felt the shudder that racked him, not from cold, but from something much deeper. "You'll stain your dress," he growled, his voice breaking at the edges. "I don't care. It's white. The blood will never come out. I can't see colors, Lazarus." I squeezed him tighter, feeling his heart thunder against my ear. "And even if I could, I would choose red. I would choose you." His arms finally lifted. They wrapped around me with a strength that should have been terrifying, but which I felt only as refuge. And there, in the middle of a field of corpses, embracing a monster who had just torn a dozen men apart because of me, I finally understood. I was no longer the porcelain doll locked in a tower. I was his, and he was mine. If you want to know how a blind oracle ended up in the arms of the kingdom's most dangerous mercenary, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you are listening to my story from. Come with me on this journey. This story is mine, but now it is yours too. It all started when my clan decided I was too precious to stay, and too dangerous to protect. My world was always made of sounds, textures, and smells. I didn't remember colors. I didn't know what the blue of the sky or the green of the leaves that poets celebrated so much looked like. My eyes had been born sealed to common light, silver and milky, windows open only to glimpses of futures I didn't ask to see. But I knew the temple as I knew my own body. The sound of my bare feet on the cold marble, 63 steps from my cell to the audience chamber. The smell of myrrh incense that the priestesses burned day and night, trying to purify the air I breathed. The rough texture of the stone walls when my fingers used them as a guide. Every crack and imperfection mapped in my memory. 22 years living in the same gilded cage. 22 years being protected from a world they never let me touch. That morning, I knew something had changed before they even told me. The temple had a rhythm of its own. Soft steps of the acolytes, the constant murmur of prayers, the rustle of fabrics when the priestesses bowed in my presence. But today the steps were hurried. The whispers carried edges of panic, and the smell of fear, sour and unmistakable, permeated every corridor. "Lady Oracle," High Priestess Marin's voice trembled when she approached. I could hear the creaking of her old joints as she knelt, the rustle of her ceremonial robes. "What happened?" I asked. A pause. The kind of pause people make when they don't want to deliver bad news. "There is war, lady. The Vane clan marched against our borders at dawn. Our warriors..." Another pause. Longer. "Our warriors are not enough. They are coming for me." It wasn't a question. I had seen fragments of this future months ago. Pieces of visions that woke me up in a cold sweat. Men in black armor marching through burning fields. a face I couldn't distinguish, saying my name with a hunger that wasn't for flesh. "Lord Vane wants your visions as a weapon," Marin confirmed. "If he captures you, I know what happens if he captures me." I had seen that too. A cage much smaller than this one. Chains that bit my flesh. Pain-forcing visions that would shatter me from the inside until only a useful husk remained. "The council has decided you must be moved," Marin said. "There is a sanctuary in the northern mountains. Sacred, protected by ancient magic. Lord Vane will not be able to touch you there. And who will take me through hostile territory? The warriors you don't have?" The silence that followed told me more than words. "We hired someone," Marin finally admitted. "A mercenary. The best that gold can buy." Mercenary. The word tasted like iron in my mouth. "When does he arrive?" "He is already here. I felt him before I heard him." A presence entering the temple that was completely unlike anything I had ever experienced. Heavy. Dark. Like an approaching storm. Carrying electricity in the air. His steps were different from the others. Heavy boots striking the marble with a cadence that spoke of relentless purpose. And then he stopped. A few feet from me. If the sound distance was correct. "Is she it?" His voice cut through me like thunder. Grave. Rough. Like rocks dragging against each other. There was a rudeness there that didn't try to hide. An indifference that treated me as an object before he even knew my name. "This is Lady Oracle Celine," Marin said, and I could hear the disapproval in her tone. "Show respect. Respect is not included in the price." His steps drew closer. Closer. Closer still. Too close. "Can she walk?" "I can answer for myself," I said, raising my chin in the direction of his voice. "And yes, I can walk." A pause. I felt the air move when he leaned down, likely examining me. "You are blind." What a keen observation. Another silence. And then, something I didn't expect. A low sound, almost a growl, that could have been irritation, or could have been something akin to amusement. That complicates things. I navigate perfectly fine. My other senses compensate. Navigating a polished marble temple is different from crossing the Devil's Gorge. He moved away, his heavy steps circling around me like a predator assessing prey. Uneven terrain, ravines, enemies who won't wait for you to stumble before attacking. "Then you had better be as good as they say." His steps stopped abruptly. "What do you know about what they say about me?" I knew nothing. I had only sensed his reaction, the slight tension in his voice, and used it as a weapon. "I see things," I said simply. "It is my gift." It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. He was silent for a long moment. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, could almost hear the gears turning in his mind as he reassessed me. "We leave at dusk," he finally said. "Bring only the essentials. No ceremonial dresses, no incense, no—" "I know what is essential." "Good." His steps began to move away. "And Oracle?" "Yes?" "Don't slow me down, and you will live." The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the entire temple. Marin let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "What a horrible man," she said. "If there was any other option." But I barely heard her. My mind was still processing his presence. The weight in the air when he was near. The scent I had caught when he approached. Aged leather and cold steel and something wilder beneath it. Like night forest after a storm. I had spent 22 years surrounded by soft voices and gentle touches. 22 years being treated as something precious and fragile. A porcelain doll that could break at the slightest breath. No one had ever spoken to me the way he did. Rudely, yes, but also with a brutal honesty that was almost refreshing. And beneath the fear he clearly intended to inspire, I felt something else. A spark. An electric curiosity that I shouldn't feel for a man who called me package and threatened my life in the same breath. My wolf, dormant for so many years I almost forgot she existed, stirred somewhere deep inside. "Lady?" Marin touched my arm gently. "Are you all right?" "I am," I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "I need to prepare." I walked back to my quarters, counting the steps automatically, my fingers finding the familiar walls. But for the first time, the walls seemed smaller, and the world outside, despite all its dangers, had never seemed so vast. The world beyond the temple walls was a chaotic symphony that nearly knocked me down. Sounds I had never experienced hit me from all sides. The rustle of leaves on trees I only knew from descriptions. The chirping of birds that were not the domesticated ones in the inner garden. The wind, unfiltered by stone walls, but free and biting, carrying smells of wet earth, distant pines, and something that might be approaching snow. I stumbled on the first 3 steps outside the gate. A huge hand grabbed my arm before I could fall. "I said you would be a problem." Lazarus's voice was laden with irritation. He straightened me with the same delicacy he would use to reposition a sack of grain. "I just need a moment to adjust," I said, hating the weakness in my voice. "We don't have a moment." He pulled me forward. Vane's scouts were seen less than an hour from here. "We need to move." He guided me to something large and alive, warm, that smelled of fur and hay. A horse. The creature snorted when I approached, its warm breath hitting my face. "Get on," Lazarus ordered. Now. Huge hands grabbed my waist and lifted me as if I weighed nothing. My stomach somersaulted when I was suddenly high up, the world completely different from up here. I clung to the first thing I found. A rough mane, my heart racing. And then he mounted behind me. Nothing could have prepared me for that. His body was immense. I knew he was large. I had deduced it from his voice and heavy steps. But feeling him like this, pressed against my back, was something else entirely. It was like leaning against a heated stone wall. If stone walls could radiate raw power and smell of leather and night forest. "The terrain is going to get rough," he said, his voice vibrating in my ear. So close he was. "I'll have to tie you up." "What?" Before I could protest, I felt ropes being passed around my waist. Not too tight, but firm, connecting me to his body in a way that wouldn't allow me to fall even if I tried. "That way you won't break your neck in the first ravine." How reassuring. Another of those sounds that could almost be a laugh, stifled immediately after. The horse moved, and my world turned into sway and rhythm. For the first few hours, I was rigid as a statue. Every muscle in my body locked, trying to keep distance from Lazarus even while tied to him. It was impossible, of course. Every movement of the horse threw me against his chest, his arms, his thighs that flexed around mine to control the mount. He didn't say a word. The silence should have been uncomfortable. Instead, I found myself filling it with observations, the sound of his breath, deep and controlled, the heat emanating from him like a living furnace, so different from the constant cold I felt in the temple. The scent I was already beginning to associate specifically with him, leather and steel, and that wild note I couldn't identify. The terrain changed gradually. The gentle trot gave way to more careful steps, the horse choosing every foothold. The air grew colder, thinner. We were climbing. "The Devil's Gorge," I said, more to myself than to him. "You know it? I've heard stories. Treacherous mountain pass. Wild wolves. Bandits hiding in the caves. The stories don't do it justice." He guided the horse to the left, skirting something I couldn't perceive. "The passage is our best chance. Vane's armies are too many to cross through here. They will have to circle around the plain, which gives us 2 days' advantage. If we survive the gorge. That is my specialty, Oracle. Surviving." There was something in his tone when he said that. Not pride, something darker. Tiredness, maybe. Or resignation. Before I could answer, the horse stopped abruptly. Lazarus tensed behind me. Every muscle in his body contracted, turning him from warm to stone. What? Silence. One word. An order. And I obeyed immediately, something in his voice leaving no room for question. Seconds dragged by. I strained my ears desperately, trying to catch whatever he had perceived. Wind in the trees, the snort of the horse, the rustle of arrows. The hiss cut the air inches from my head. The horse whinnied in panic, rearing. I would have fallen if I hadn't been tied. But even so, the impact threw me violently against Lazarus. "Hold on!" he roared. The world turned into a chaos of motion. The horse bolted, its hooves thundering against the trail. Lazarus leaned over me, covering me with his body as more arrows hissed around us. One of them hit something close by, a viscous sound that made my stomach turn. "The horse was hit," I gasped. "I know." The mount stumbled, staggered, and then began to fall. Lazarus acted before I could scream. The ropes binding me were cut in one motion, and then I was in the air, thrown away. I landed on the hard ground, the impact stealing my breath. I heard the terrible sound of the horse falling, an animal cry of pain that would haunt me for weeks. And then silence. No, not silence. Other sounds, more subtle. Blade being unsheathed, footsteps approaching. Muffled voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize. How many were there? 3? 4? I couldn't distinguish, my ears still ringing from the fall. And where was Lazarus? "Stay where you are." His voice cut the air, completely different from before. Colder, more lethal. It was the voice of someone who wasn't threatening. He was promising. Laughter answered. The attackers were not impressed. I should have covered my ears. I should have closed my mind to what was coming. But I couldn't. The sounds that followed told me a story more vivid than any vision. The first scream, cut in half. The wet sound of something sharp finding flesh. Staggering steps, then a fall. The second attacker lasted longer, perhaps 3 seconds, trading blows before his own cry echoed and died. The third tried to run. I heard his desperate steps, growing fainter, and then a growl, a sound that wasn't human, that couldn't have come from a human throat. More steps, impossibly fast. A wet choking. Silence. Real silence this time. I lay still on the ground where I had fallen, breathing too fast, my heart thundering in my ears. Steps approached. Heavy. Familiar. "Get up!" Lazarus's voice was rough now, panting from the exertion. But it was still him. Still human. "The horse?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Dead." The arrow hit an artery. I extended my hand, expecting him to help me. For a long moment, nothing happened. "Lazarus?" "I have blood on my hands." "I don't care." Another pause. And then, huge, warm fingers wrapped around mine. There was something viscous on them, something that was cooling quickly in the cold mountain air. He pulled me up in one fluid movement, and I found myself standing, unsteady, completely disoriented. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "I don't think so." "And you?" A sound that could have been disbelief. "I don't get hurt by trash like them." He moved away, and I heard sounds of movement. Checking the bodies, perhaps. Or the horse. "They were Vane's scouts," he said after a moment. "The first 3 of many. They know we're here. What do we do now?" "We continue on foot." Steps approaching again. "The terrain gets too steep for horses from here on anyway. They can't follow us with mounts. But neither can we. I will guide you." The simplicity of the statement caught me off guard. "What?" "The terrain is rough. You are blind. You will fall and break something in 5 minutes if you try to walk alone." A pause. "I will have to carry you sometimes. Guide you the rest of the way." The implication hit me slowly. Hours, days perhaps, of constant physical contact, of depending completely on him for every step. Is there another option? There is. I leave you here to die and move on with my payment secured anyway. I swallowed hard. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I heard something being adjusted, perhaps a bag being placed on his back. But it's not what I'm going to do. Delivering you alive is part of the contract. What a comfort. I'm not here to comfort you. His hand found my elbow, not gently, but not roughly either. I am here to keep you alive. Now walk. He guided me forward. Every step was a negotiation. His arm directing me around obstacles I couldn't see. His voice occasionally barking commands. Stone, branch, drop off. The terrain was impossible. I stumbled constantly. My bare feet, which I had insisted on using because I was accustomed to feeling the ground, now wounded by stones and roots. The temperature dropped every minute, the air becoming thinner, harder to breathe. On the third time, I stumbled and nearly fell into a ravine. Lazarus stopped. This won't work. Before I could answer, he lifted me, in his arms, like a bride crossing a threshold, or a child being carried to bed. What are you? Quiet. He started walking. his steps much steadier now that he didn't have to worry about mine. You weigh less than my sword. This changes nothing. But it changed. It changed everything. Because now I was enveloped in his heat. My face was inches from his chest, and I could hear his heart beating. Steady, strong, unwavering. And as he carried me up the mountain, as night fell and the temperature plummeted, I found myself relaxing against him almost unintentionally. The world was still cold, but he was warm, and for the first time since leaving the temple, I didn't feel completely lost. Lazarus carried me for hours. I lost track of time, lulled by the steady rhythm of his steps, by the heat radiating from his body like a living furnace. The world around me was a symphony of sounds that I was learning to decipher. The wind whistling between rocks, the occasional rustle of nocturnal creatures fleeing our approach, the distant sound of water running somewhere below us. And always, his heart beating against my ear. Thum-thum, thum-thum, thum-thum. Constant as a war drum, unwavering as the man carrying it. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because when I returned to consciousness, the world had changed. The air was colder, biting, and there was a new smell. Ozone, accumulated moisture, storm. You're awake. It wasn't a question. Of course he knew. He had probably felt the change in my breathing, the sudden tension in my muscles. How long did I sleep? 3 hours, maybe 4. You needed it. And you haven't rested at all. I don't need rest. The lie was so obvious I almost laughed. I could feel the exhaustion in him now that I paid attention. The slight tremor in his arms that wasn't there before. The breathing a little heavier. He was pushing himself beyond the limits and making it look easy. Put me down, I said. I can walk. The terrain. Put me down, Lazarus. For a moment, I thought he would argue. Then, with a care that surprised me, he set me down. My legs protested when they touched the cold rock, numb from being in the same position for so long. Hold my arm, he ordered, and tell me if you need to stop. I found his elbow and clung on. He was so big my hand could barely wrap around the curve of the muscle. We walked together, slower now, him adjusting his pace to mine, guiding me around obstacles with small pressures on my arm. Left, right. Watch out for the loose stone. 2 palm drop. The wind picked up. I could feel the temperature plummeting, each gust stealing the heat from my body. My travel dress, though more practical than the temple robes, had not been made for mountains in midwinter. And then the rain started. Not gradually, not with warning drops. The storm crashed down on us as if someone had torn the sky, a solid curtain of icy water that drenched me in seconds. I cried out in shock. The cold was so intense it felt like burning. Lazarus let out a curse in a language I didn't recognize. The next instant I was in his arms again, and he was running. His steps thundered against the rock as he carried us to somewhere I couldn't see. Hold tight, he growled, and then we were somewhere dry. The sound of the rain changed, from a direct assault to a distant drumming against stone. The wind still howled, but it no longer hit us directly. We were in some kind of shelter. A cave, I said, feeling the echo of my voice on the walls. Small, but it will serve. He set me down gently, and I felt the rock surface beneath me, cold but dry. The storm looked strong. We'll have to wait. I was shaking uncontrollably. My dress was drenched, clinging to my body like a second icy skin. My teeth chattered so hard it hurt. You are freezing. I am fine. Liar. Sounds of movement, fabric being removed. And then something heavy and warm was placed over my shoulders. His cloak. It still carried the heat of his body, still smelled of leather and night forest. I wrapped myself in it instinctively, seeking any remnant of warmth. It wasn't enough. The shaking continued, growing more intense. The cold had seeped into my bones, and no amount of cloak would change that. Celine. The first time he had used my name. Not Oracle, not Seer. Celine. I need to warm you, he said, his voice strangely tense. With my body. It took me a moment to understand what he was proposing. Oh, it's survival, nothing more. I know. You'll die of hypothermia if we don't. I understand, Lazarus. Silence. I could almost feel his hesitation, the reluctance to come closer than necessary. Why? What was it about him that was so afraid of touch? Come, I said, reaching out my hand in the direction where I thought he was. It's all right. Cautious steps, and then warmth. He sat down behind me first, his back against the cave wall, his legs opening to accommodate me between them. His arms wrapped around me over the cloak, pulling me against his chest. His heat was absurd, impossible. It was like leaning against a living bonfire. How are you so warm? I managed to ask between shivers. Wolf metabolism. We run hotter than humans. I knew he was a shifter, of course. All mercenaries of his caliber were. But knowing and feeling were very different things. Gradually, painfully, the cold began to retreat. My shivers lessened. My muscles relaxed. And I found myself melting against him in a way that should have been embarrassing, but was only necessary. Better? He asked after a while. Yes. My voice was still weak. Thank you. Don't thank me. I can't deliver you dead. Always the professional. Always. But there was something in his voice that belied the words. A note of tension that had nothing to do with the cold or the danger. And his arms, though they were keeping me warm, were also rigid in a way that suggested control. Too much control. Can I ask you something? I said. You're going to ask anyway. True. What do you look like? Physically, I mean. I hesitated. I don't know what you look like. The silence that followed was so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Why does that matter? I like to know who I'm with, and my eyes don't help me. You could have asked the priestesses before we left. I didn't want to know before. Now I do. Another silence. And then, surprisingly, black hair, eyes, gray, or so they tell me. Tall, broad. That I already know. I can feel your size. A low sound that might be discomfort. What else do you want to know? Scars? I asked softly. When you carried me, I felt irregularities on your skin, through your shirt. His body contracted against mine. Every muscle tensing simultaneously. That is none of your business. I know. Sorry. I shouldn't have. Many. The word came out as if it had been ripped from him. I have many scars. It wasn't an opening. It was a closing. A wall being erected between us. But I am an oracle. And oracles are, above all, curious about the stories people hide. Can I touch? I felt his heart speed up against my back. Thumb, 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 thumb. Much faster than before. What? Your face. Your scars. It's how I see. I turned partially in his arms, facing him so I could look at him, even if looking was just an expression. It's how I get to know people. You don't have to agree, but I'm asking. The silence this time was different, heavy, laden with something I couldn't fully identify. I waited. His heart continued to race. His breathing had changed, shallower, faster. The arm around me had loosened, as if he was preparing to flee. Why do you want this? He finally asked. His voice was hoarse now, almost unrecognizable. Because you are the person keeping me alive. Because we are going to spend days together. And because... I hesitated, not knowing how to explain. Because there is something in you that my wolf recognizes, and I want to understand what. The silence stretched so long I was about to give up, and then he took my hand. His fingers were huge around mine. Calloused, rough, hands that had wielded weapons for years. He lifted my hand slowly, so slowly, and placed it against his face. Go ahead, he said, his voice almost a whisper. See. My fingers trembled, and it was no longer from cold. I started at the jaw. It was exactly as I had imagined. Strong, angular, covered by a short beard that scratched my fingertips like fine sandpaper. I moved up the contour of his face, feeling the bones beneath the skin, the structure of something that had been built for violence. He wasn't breathing. I could feel it. The way his chest had stopped moving, as if any movement might break whatever was happening between us. I found the first scar. It ran from the corner of his left eye to his temple. Thin, old, the smooth skin of a wound that had healed a long time ago. My fingers traced it gently, feeling every millimeter. That was the first, he said, his voice so low it was almost a whisper. I was 16. A man tried to sell me to a fighting arena. What happened to him? I killed him. The words should have scared me. They didn't. I continued moving up. I found the eyebrows, thick and expressive, the broad forehead. And then I moved down his nose, which had been broken at least twice, the bridge slightly crooked. That was a tavern brawl, he offered before I asked. I was drunk. The other man was more so. Did you win? Obviously. I almost smiled. My fingers found his lips, full for a man, but firm, chapped by the cold. I felt them part slightly under my touch, his breath finally escaping, warm against my skin. His heart was thundering now. I could feel it through the contact, a war drum that had completely lost its steady rhythm. I moved to his cheeks. More scars here, thin as spider webs, crisscrossing the skin in patterns that told stories of blades that had come too close. How many scars do you have? I asked. I stopped counting after 50. And on your body? Silence. His hand, which still held mine against his face, tightened slightly. More. I wanted to ask. I wanted to know every story, every battle, every moment that had transformed this man into what he was now. But there were limits, even for a curious oracle. Then he did something unexpected. He let go of my hand, and before I could protest the loss of contact, he took it again and guided it down, to his neck, to his chest. Since you want to know, he said, his voice gravelly, then know everything. His shirt was open. I hadn't realized it before, but now my fingers found bare skin, and the world narrowed down to textures. Scars everywhere, not small and thin like those on his face. These were different, deep, cruel. Some were gashes in the flesh, marks of blades that had cut almost to the bone. Others were circular, perhaps from arrows or spears. And one, directly over his heart, was large and jagged, as if someone had tried to tear it from his chest. That one nearly killed me, he said when my fingers found that last one. A shadow priestess. She was trying to perform a ritual. She needed the heart of an alpha to complete it. What happened? I killed her, but not before she managed to start cutting. My hand rested on the scar. Beneath it, his heart was beating. Strong. Alive. Despite everything they had done to stop it. How did you survive all this? I whispered. I don't know. His voice was strange now, vulnerable in a way that didn't match anything I knew of him. Sometimes I think death simply got tired of chasing me. Or maybe you were being saved for something. A sound that could have been a bitter laugh. Saved for what? To kill more? To spill more blood? That's all I know how to do, Celine. Destroy things. You are protecting me. Because I'm being paid. You warmed me when I was freezing. Because I need to deliver you alive. You let me touch your face. Your scars. My hand was still over his heart, feeling every accelerated beat. How much did that cost in our contract? He didn't answer. The storm roared outside, wind and rain battering the cave entrance. But in here, in the cocoon of heat he had created around me, there was only silence, and breathing, and the sound of two hearts beating faster than they should. You are gentle, I said, beneath all the scars and the blood and the threats. You are gentle. I am not. You are. You just forgot how to show it. His hand covered mine, pressing it more firmly against his chest. I could feel the tremor in him now, not from cold, not from exhaustion, from something completely different. You shouldn't touch me like this, he said harshly. You don't know what I'm capable of. I am an oracle. I see many things. You don't see everything. Then tell me. Silence. Long, heavy, laden with unspoken words. And then he started talking. He told me about the arena where he grew up, fighting since he was 12. He told me about the men he killed before he learned to count. He told me about the night his wolf woke up for the first time, tearing 3 guards to pieces before he managed to regain control. He told me about the constant fear that the beast inside him would consume everything that remained of the man. I don't trust myself, he confessed, the words torn from him like bone chips. Not near, fragile things. I am not fragile. You are the most fragile thing I have ever held. His hand moved, leaving mine and rising to my face. Calloused fingers touched my cheek with a softness that contradicted everything he had said. And the most precious. My breath caught. Lazarus. No. His tone hardened. That can't happen. What can't? This. His body moved, moving me gently but firmly away. You are a job. A package to be delivered. And I am a monster who learned long ago that monsters don't deserve good things. The cold returned immediately. Not the cold of the storm, but something worse. The cold of rejection. You are not a monster, I said. You haven't seen me fight. I heard. On the road, when you killed the scouts. And you weren't afraid? No. The word slipped out before I could consider it. I felt something else. Silence. What did you feel? He asked. And there was something in his voice now. Something hungry. Safety. I swallowed hard. I felt safe knowing you were capable of that. Knowing you stood between me and anything that wanted to hurt me. Another silence. Longer. Heavier. When he spoke again, his voice was almost unrecognizable. You should sleep. The storm will last all night. And tomorrow the path will be difficult. It was an escape. A refusal to continue the conversation. And I should have insisted. Should have pressed. Should have forced him to face whatever was happening between us. But I was also exhausted. And confused. And his heat still called to me like a flame calls a moth. All right, I said. But you need to rest too. I will keep watch. All night? I've done it before. I didn't argue. Instead, I allowed myself to relax against him again, seeking the warmth he didn't deny me even while denying everything else. His arms closed around me. Protective. Constant. And as the storm roared outside and the fire of survival that was Lazarus kept me alive, I allowed myself to drift off. But even in sleep I could feel him. His breath against my hair. His heart beating beneath my hand. And in my dreams, I saw something that was not the future. I saw a black wolf, immense with silver eyes that glowed like moons. He stood before me, trembling. Not from anger, not from hunger. From fear. Fear of hurting me. And I, in the dream, reached out my hand and touched his muzzle. And the wolf finally stopped trembling. The vision hit me like lightning in the dark. It didn't come gradually, as it sometimes did. It didn't emerge from dreams with subtle warnings. One moment I was sleeping, wrapped in Lazarus's heat, and the next the world exploded into fragments of the future that tore through my mind. Blood on the snow, red on white, so vivid I could almost smell its metallic scent. A stone bridge suspended over an abyss, shadows surrounding us, blades raised, predator eyes, and Lazarus, standing between me and a dozen men, alone. I saw him fall. I saw the blade piercing his chest, in the same spot where my hands had rested hours before. I saw his blood staining the snow. I saw the light leaving his eyes as he fell to his knees, still trying to reach me. I saw him die. I screamed, not the silent scream of my normal visions. This was a torn, animal sound that ripped me from sleep and echoed off the cave walls. My entire body convulsed, back arching, hands closing into claws that scraped the rock. Celine! Hands holding me, voice calling my name. But I couldn't answer, couldn't see the present, only that horrible future repeating in infinite loops. He dying, he dying, he dying because of me. Celine, listen to me, look at me. The order cut through the chaos. My body obeyed before my mind, the alpha authority in his voice impossible to ignore. The vision shattered, fragments of the future dissolving like smoke. I gasped, returning to the present. Something warm was running down my face. I touched my upper lip and felt the viscous moisture. Blood. The vision had been so intense that my body paid the price. You're bleeding. Lazarus's voice was tense. Celine, what happened? His hands were on my face now. Large, warm, impossibly gentle as he wiped the blood from my nose with the fabric of his own shirt. A vision, I managed to say between ragged breaths. An ambush. When? Where? Today, a bridge over a gorge. My hands found his wrists, grabbing with desperate force. Lazarus, you are going to die. The silence that followed was different from the others. Colder. Tell me everything. 12 men, maybe more. They surround us on the bridge. My voice failed. You put me behind a rock and fight alone. And they are too many. A blade pierces your chest. You fall and... I couldn't finish. The sob that escaped was humiliating, but I couldn't contain it. The image of him dying was burned into my mind, as vivid as the scars beneath my fingers. Hey, his voice was strangely soft. Look at me. I can't. I know you can't see, but look anyway. I raised my face in the direction of his voice. Tears I couldn't shed welled up behind my useless eyes. I'm not going to die, he said. You don't know that. You saw a possible future. His hand still held my face, thumbs tracing soft circles on my cheeks. Visions can be changed, can't they? Sometimes. But this one was so clear. Then let's change it. The certainty in his voice was unwavering, as if death was just another enemy he could defeat through pure willpower. How? I asked. You told me where. You told me how many. That already changes everything. His hands left my face, and I felt the loss immediately. Which bridge? Stone. Old. Over a deep abyss. The wind was very strong. The hangman's bridge. It's half a day from here. I heard him stand up, moving around the cave. It's the only safe crossing in this part of the gorge. Vane's men must have deduced our route. Is there another way? Not one a human can cross. Human. The word hurt more than it should have. So you will face them. I will. What if you die anyway? If my vision... Celine. He was close to me again, his presence a wave of heat in the darkness. I faced worse odds. I fought bigger numbers. And I'm still here. But this time I have something I didn't have before. What? Silence. The heavy, meaningful kind. A reason to live, he finally said. His voice was rough, almost reluctant, as if the words had escaped without permission. My heart stopped. Lazarus. No. His tone hardened. Don't say anything. It doesn't change what needs to be done. But, do you want me to survive? He knelt before me. I could feel the change in the air. Then let me do what I know how to do. Let me protect you. What if I don't want to be protected like that? At the cost of your life? You don't have a choice. There is always a choice. A low sound, almost a growl. What would the alternative be, Selene? I hand you over to Vane. I let you be used as a weapon until there's nothing left of you. His hand found my chin, raising my face. I have seen women broken by men like him. I won't let that happen to you. Why? The question escaped before I could contain it. Why do you care so much? You said I was just a job. Silence. The kind of silence that lasts an eternity. I lied, he finally said. The words were almost inaudible. You were never just a job. Not from the moment you touched me. My breath hitched. When I carried you through the storm, he continued, each word seeming to be torn from him. When you slept in my arms as if you trusted me. Something shifted. Something I thought was dead. What? My wolf. The confession came out as a sigh. He woke up. For the first time in years, he doesn't want to destroy. He wants to protect. To belong. The tears finally flowed, warm and silent. Then don't die, I said, my voice breaking. Please, Lazarus, don't die. I will try. Try harder than that. My hands found his chest, pressing over the heart scar. No one touches what is mine. Not even death. I felt the shock run through his body. The words he had used so easily, thrown back at him as a promise. For a moment, neither of us moved. And then he did something I didn't expect. He kissed my forehead, softly, reverently, a promise sealed in flesh. Rest a little more, he said as he pulled away, his voice rough with contained emotion. When the storm passes, we move, and I will show you that visions can be rewritten. He moved away, and I heard him take position at the cave entrance, guarding, watching, protecting. I lay down again, but I didn't sleep. I lay listening to his breath, his heart, his presence, and I prayed to all the gods I knew that I was wrong, that for the first time in my life, my vision would not come true. The storm died with the dawn. I knew it before Lazarus told me, feeling the change in the air pressure, the gradual silence that replaced the roar of the wind. The world outside was quiet now. that heavy quietness that comes after violent storms. "We need to go," he said. I didn't argue. Every minute we spent standing still was another minute for Vane's men to position themselves. Lazarus carried me again, although I had insisted on walking for the last few hours. His injuries were healing, faster than any human had a right to, but I still felt the tension in his muscles when he moved wrong. "You can put me down," I said. "Not yet." We continued walking. I could feel the change in the terrain. Stone giving way to something softer, perhaps grass. The air was warmer here, carrying scents of flowers and incense that reminded me of the temple. Voices approached, several of them, overlapping in tones of surprise and reverence. The oracle has arrived. Prepare the quarters. Call the high priestess." Lazarus stopped walking. His arms tightened around me for an instant, so brief I almost thought I imagined it. And then, carefully, he set me down. "You are safe, seer," he said. His voice was different now, colder, more distant. The mercenary was back. Strange hands touched me. Feminine voices murmured blessings and words of comfort. Someone mentioned a warm bath, clean clothes, food, everything I should want after days of terror and exhaustion. But all I could focus on was the sound of his footsteps, moving away. "Lazarus?" The steps stopped. "Payment will be delivered to your representative in the lower city," a male voice said. Probably a sanctuary administrator. "Enough gold for 20 guards, as agreed." "I thank you." His voice was polite, empty, completely different from the man who had sobbed in my arms just 2 days before. "Lazarus, wait." I tried to pull away from the hands guiding me, but they were gently insistent. "The lady needs rest," one of the priestesses said. "The journey was long. I need to speak to him. The mercenary has been paid. His work is complete. His work." As if everything that happened between us could be reduced to a transaction. "Let go of me." My voice came out stronger than I expected, more commanding. "Now." The hands hesitated, and then, surprisingly, obeyed. I turned in the direction where I had heard his footsteps. I walked, my hands extended before me, my bare feet finding smooth stone beneath them. I probably looked pathetic. A blind woman fumbling in the dark, seeking a man who was clearly trying to flee. I didn't care. "Lazarus." The steps had stopped again. He was nearby, I could feel it. That familiar warmth, that scent of leather and forest that I already associated with safety. "You should go with the priestesses," he said. His voice was careful, controlled. "Why are you running away?" Silence. "I'm not running away. The job is over. You are safe. There's no reason for me to stay." "There's no reason?" I laughed, a bitter sound that scratched my throat. "After everything that happened? After everything you said?" I said many things in the cave. There was tension in his voice now, something cracking beneath the calm surface. Things I shouldn't have said. "Do you regret it?" Silence. Longer this time. "No," he finally admitted. "But that changes nothing. It changes everything. Celine." He sighed, a sound of exhaustion that went far beyond the physical. "Look at where you are. A sacred sanctuary. Priestesses treating you like royalty. This is your world. Mine is blood and violence and caves during storms," I interrupted him. "And carrying me when I couldn't walk. And warming me when I was freezing. And almost dying to protect me. That was the job." "Liar." The word cut the air between us. I took one more step forward. My fingers found the fabric of his shirt, still stained with dried blood that hadn't had time to wash off. "You told me I was the first piece you had found in years," I said. "You told me your wolf woke up when you touched me. You called me precious. I know what I said. Then why are you running away?" His hands closed around my wrists, gently but firmly enough to keep me in place. "Because you deserve more than a monster with blood on his hands," he said, his voice breaking at the edges. "You deserve peace, not more violence. Light, not darkness. I am blind, Lazarus. Darkness is all I know." I felt the shudder that ran through his body. "That's not... You don't understand." I pulled my wrists free and raised my hands to his face. He allowed it, the muscles contracting beneath my touch. I spent 22 years in a temple, surrounded by light I couldn't see. Candles, stained glass, gold. And I felt lonelier than I can describe. My fingers traced the familiar scars. The one on his temple, the one on his nose, the small webs around his eyes. And then you appeared. I continued. Rude, violent, covered in darkness. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not as an oracle, not as a tool, as a woman. Selene. I saw many futures, Lazarus. My voice was firm now, carrying an authority I didn't know I possessed. I saw paths where you leave, and I spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. I saw paths where you die in some random tavern, alone, thinking you didn't deserve love. He stood completely still. But I also saw other futures, I said. Futures where you stay, where your darkness meets my light, where we both finally stop being alone. You saw that? I choose that. My hands descended from his face to his chest, to the scar over his heart, the one a shadow priestess had left when she tried to tear it out. I don't want a sanctuary, I said. I don't want empty peace and gilded solitude. I want you, your blood, your scars, your wolf, everything. I don't know how to do that. His voice was rough, broken. To be gentle, to be what you deserve. You already are. I killed 16 men in front of your ears. For me? I pressed my hand harder against his heart. You did that for me, and I know you would do it again. I would. There was no hesitation. 100 times. 1,000. Then stay. I raised my face in his direction, even without being able to see him. Stay and protect me. Not as a mercenary, as mine. The silence stretched for an eternity, and then he moved. His hands found my face. Large, calloused, trembling slightly. He leaned down, and I felt his warm breath against my lips. I'm going to hurt you, he whispered. Not intentionally, but I will. It's what I do. I survived visions that nearly killed me. I survived fleeing my clan. I survived you. A smile curved my lips. I think I can handle a few scratches. He laughed. A low, rough sound that vibrated against my skin. You are impossible. And you are mine, if you want to be. The answer did not come in words. His lips found mine, and the whole world disappeared. The kiss was everything I expected, and nothing I could have imagined. Desperate at first, as if he were dying of thirst and I were water. Then softer, exploring, learning. His hands on my face, in my hair, on my waist, as if he couldn't decide where to touch me. And I lost myself in him, in the heat radiating from his body, in the taste of blood and desperation on his lips, in the sound of his heart thundering against my chest. When we separated, we were both breathless. Does this mean you're staying? I asked. It means I'm never leaving again. His voice was a promise, an oath, an absolute certainty. Wherever you go, I go. Whoever tries to hurt you dies, until my last breath. Tears streamed down my face. I thought you said you didn't know how to be gentle. Perhaps you can teach me. Behind us, I could hear the priestesses murmuring. Shocked, probably. Scandalized. A sacred oracle kissing a blood-covered mercenary in the sanctuary courtyard. I didn't care. Come, I said, taking his hand. I'll introduce you to my new home. Our new home, he corrected. Our. The word was new. Strange. Perfect. We walked together toward the scandalized voices and the murmured blessings, my hand in his warmth enveloping my darkness. I was still blind. I still saw only painful fragments of futures I couldn't always change. But for the first time, the future I saw was bright. And by my side, finally visible to my soul if not to my eyes, was the man who had crossed mountains and killed 16 men and delivered his broken heart to a woman who couldn't even see his face, my guardian, my wolf, my destiny, Lazarus. Thank you for being here and for joining me for another story. I truly hope you enjoyed it. If you want, leave your comment. I love reading what you feel and think after each episode. Thank you for the love, and see you in the next story.